Tonight, imagine you're living in the Middle Ages. There are no psychiatrists, no hospitals for mental health, and no modern understanding of the human mind. So what happened when someone heard voices, suffered deep depression, or behaved in ways nobody could explain? Were they seen as cursed, possessed by demons, touched by God, or simply abandoned by society? The truth is far more complicated and far more human than most people imagine. Before we step into the candlelit villages, monasteries, and castle halls of medieval Europe, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these immersive historical journeys. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and let's discover what really happened to mentally ill people in the Middle Ages. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing ankle deep in the soft brown mud of a medieval village road, with cold mist sliding up from the river and smoke hanging low beneath the thatched roofs. Your boots are heavy, your cloak smells faintly of wet wool, and somewhere beyond the crooked cottages a church bell marks the fading hour with a tired bronze voice. Straw lies damp beneath the stable door, torchlight trembles against cold stone, and a horse exhales white breath into the winter air as if even the animals are reconsidering their life choices. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here, not because you lack courage, but because one rainy Tuesday, one suspicious stew, and one infected splinter might do what whole armies fail to do. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the mist gathers around your knees, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what the local time is there, whether it is midnight, dawn, or some strange hour known only to owls and exhausted students. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You draw your cloak closer and follow the lane toward the village green, where the last of the day's trade is being folded away beneath the rough canvas. A fishmonger packs salted eels into a wooden tub. A woman shakes old rushes from her doorway, the stale reeds dark with soot and spilled ale. A boy with red hands carries a bucket from the well, slopping half of it onto his own shoes, which is perhaps the most honest form of medieval plumbing. Above you, the sky is the colour of cold pewter, and the first stars appear as small pale scratches over the church tower. You have come here as a traveller with no great title, no banner, no purse heavy enough to impress anyone at the gate. You carry only a bedroll, a crust of coarse bread wrapped in cloth, and the weary hope that someone will let you sleep near a fire. The village is called Brackenmere, though no one can quite agree whether the name comes from the thorny marsh beyond the mill or from some forgotten saint who supposedly tamed a nest of serpents there. In places like this, memory and mud settle into the same cracks. The cottages lean close together, their walls patched with wattle and daub, their roofs thick with straw. Smoke seeps through roof holes and gathers beneath the eaves. Dogs nose through the muck. Chickens complain in the royal manner of chickens everywhere, and somewhere a baby cries behind a shutter. The sound is ordinary, human, and thin in the cold. Yet beneath all these familiar village noises you sense another murmur. At first, it is only a lowered voice near the well, then a glance from one woman to another, then the quick sign of the cross made by a carter whose cartwheel is broken near the green. You pause beside the village trough, warming your hands around the last heat stored in your sleeves, and listen without seeming to listen. He has come back from the Northfield, someone whispers. Talking to the hedge again, says another. Not the hedge, mutters an old man, to someone behind it. A door closes, a latch drops. From the churchyard, a raven lifts itself from the wall and beats away into the gloom. You turn and see him then. A man stands at the edge of the green, half in mist, half in the dim amber wash from the alehouse door. He is not old, though his hair hangs in greyish tangles, and his beard is full of burrs. His tunic is torn at one sleeve. His bare hands twitch at his sides, and his eyes move as if following sparks no one else can see. He speaks softly, not to the villagers, not to you, but to the empty cold air just over his shoulder. No one runs at him. No one strikes him. Not yet. That is the first thing you notice. The second is that no one goes very near. A girl carrying kindling stops beside her mother's skirt. A baker, white with flour up to his elbows, peers from his doorway. The reeve's servant, a narrow man with a belt full of keys, watches with the careful expression of someone deciding whether this is a village problem, a church problem, or a problem best left to become someone else's by morning. The man at the green lifts one finger, as though asking silence from a crowd only he can hear. Hush, he says. The bells are under the ground tonight. The church bell, very much above ground, rings once in the tower. The villagers shift uneasily. In this world, a troubled mind is rarely only one thing. It may be sorrow, it may be sickness, it may be sin, or moonlight, or an imbalance of humours, or grief that has chewed too deeply through the heart. Some swear that certain people hear saints, others swear they hear devils, others, more practical, say a man who has slept 3 nights in frost and eaten nothing but turnip peel may speak oddly, without needing either heaven or hell to explain it. You stand with mud on your boots and feel the chill creep through the seams. You know, because you come from another age, that minds can break under weight no one else sees. But here, in Brackenmere, such knowledge has no tidy name. There is no clean little room with white walls, no printed forms, no quiet appointment, no word that settles the matter kindly. There is only the person, the village, the priest, the healer, the family if one remains, and the long uncertain question of what should be done before night deepens. The man turns suddenly, smiling at nothing. It is not a wicked smile. It is almost tender. Mother says the rushes must be changed, he says. At this, an older woman near the alehouse presses a fist to her mouth. You can see at once that she knows him. Perhaps everyone does. Villagers keep few secrets, only secrets that are politely stepped around like puddles. His mother has been dead 7 winters, the carter whispers. A gust of wind moves over the green. The torch outside the alehouse bends and flares. Somewhere nearby, pottage thickens in a pot, smelling of onions, peas, and smoked bacon if the household is lucky. Your stomach answers with a hollow complaint, disgracefully loud and not at all respectful of the moment. The old woman near the alehouse steps forward, not close, but closer than the rest. "Tom," she says softly, "come in from the cold." The man looks at her, and for a heartbeat the air seems to settle. The dogs stop nosing through the straw, the villagers hold themselves still, even the broken cartwheel appears to wait, though to be fair, it has limited options. Tom blinks, his lips tremble, then he laughs once, quietly, sadly, like a man remembering a joke from childhood and finding it changed. "She is under the bells," he says. The old woman crosses herself. "Aye, then, come warm yourself all the same." This is how the evening begins, not with a trial, not with chains, not with some grand cruelty shouted beneath a blood-red sky, but with a cold village, a frightened crowd, and one woman trying to coax a troubled man toward a fire. Medieval life can be harsh enough to crack bone, yet it is also made of small mercies, unevenly given, easily withdrawn, and sometimes offered with trembling hands. You follow at a distance as Tom allows himself to be guided toward the alehouse door. The villagers part for him, not rudely, but carefully, as they might part for a skittish horse or a pot carried full of boiling broth. The smell of ale, smoke, damp wool, and old rushes rolls out into the lane. Inside, shadows gather beneath soot-black rafters. A beeswax candle burns near a wooden image of St. Dymphna. Though the carving is so worn that no one can quite agree whether it is truly her or simply a saint-shaped piece of hopeful timber. You duck beneath the low lintel. Behind you, the church bell rings again, slower now, calling the village toward night. And as the door closes against the mist, you understand that in this place, the question of what happens to those whose minds wander into dark or dazzling country will not have one answer. It will have many prayer, fear, pity, herbs, gossip, confinement, pilgrimage, laughter, suspicion, patience, and sometimes a bowl of hot pottage set down without a word. You step into the warmth, and the tale moves with you. The warmth of the alehouse folds around you like an old wool blanket that has seen better centuries. The door shuts behind you with a wooden thud, sealing out the river mist and most of the cold, though not quite all of it. Medieval buildings have a remarkable talent for inviting drafts through cracks no one can find and refusing to let them leave once they arrive. The room glows with candlelight and firelight. Smoke curls beneath soot-black rafters. Rushes cover the floor, carrying faint scents of rosemary, old ale, damp boots, and whatever was spilled here 3 weeks ago and never fully discovered. A great iron pot hangs above the hearth, and the bubbling pottage sends comforting smells through the hall. Tom sits near the fire. Not too near. You notice that immediately. The villagers have left a respectful space around him. Nobody has ordered this arrangement. No reeve has declared it. Yet every bench and stool seems positioned just a little farther away than usual. The old woman who guided him inside sets a wooden bowl into his hands. "Eat while it's hot." Tom studies the bowl as though it contains a message. For several moments he does nothing. Then he begins eating. The room collectively exhales. You settle onto a bench near the wall, grateful for warmth. Your boots steam gently beside the hearth. Across from you, a merchant with a red nose tears coarse bread into pieces. 2 shepherds share ale from a single cup. A black dog sleeps beneath the table, occasionally twitching as if chasing rabbits in dreams. The dog lifts its head and wanders toward Tom. A few villagers stiffen. The dog sniffs Tom's hand. Tom absent-mindedly scratches behind its ears. The dog immediately decides this is an excellent arrangement and lies down at his feet. Animals often ignore the rules people invent. No one can quite agree whether they are wiser because of it. The innkeeper brings you a cup of weak ale and a chunk of bread. You thank him and listen as conversation gradually resumes around the room. At first the talk stays safely distant. The weather, the price of oats, a broken mill wheel, a pig that escaped 3 villages away and somehow returned fatter than when it left. Then, slowly, inevitably, the discussion drifts back toward Tom. Not openly, not directly. Medieval villagers are experts at discussing someone without appearing to discuss them. "Hard winter coming," says one farmer. "Aye. Some folk don't fare well in long winters." "No." A pause. "Then, his brother used to say that—" Several heads nod. You learn bits of the story as the evening unfolds. Tom was once a cooper. He made barrels, good ones, by all accounts. He married young, had a daughter, worked hard. Then sickness came through the village years ago. His wife died. The daughter died shortly afterward. After that, people say something changed. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Some insist grief hollowed him out. Some say fever damaged his mind. Some swear he spent a night lost in the marsh and returned speaking strangely. Others quietly wonder whether sorrow simply became too heavy for one man to carry. The medieval world lacks many modern explanations, but it knows grief very well. Grief is everywhere here. Every family has buried children. Every village remembers winters that carried people away. Every churchyard contains names forgotten by all but God. The idea that sorrow might wound the mind is not entirely foreign to medieval people, even if they describe it differently. Tom finishes his pottage. For a little while he appears calm. He strokes the dog's ears. He watches the fire. The villagers relax. Then suddenly he speaks. They're singing again. The room stills. Tom stares into the flames. The bells beneath the hill. No one answers. The dead are singing. Silence. You hear only crackling logs. The old woman sighs. What do they sing, Tom? Tom tilts his head. For a moment his expression becomes strangely peaceful. Harvest songs. A shepherd near you quietly mutters, better than hearing tax collectors. Several villagers chuckle despite themselves. Even the old woman smiles. Humour survives almost everything, especially uncomfortable situations. Tom smiles too. Then the smile fades. His eyes fill unexpectedly with tears. The transformation is so swift that it catches everyone off guard. One moment he seems content. The next he looks utterly broken. He lowers his face into his hands. No dramatic outburst follows. No matters of storybooks. Only grief. Raw and exhausted. The room grows very quiet. The old woman moves closer. She rests a hand on his shoulder. Tom begins to cry. Softly. The kind of crying that sounds older than words. You notice something important. No one laughs. No one throws him out. No one calls him cursed. Not here. Not tonight. Instead, people look away politely, giving him dignity. A merchant suddenly becomes fascinated by his cup. A shepherd studies the fire. The innkeeper wipes an already clean table. This and too, as part of medieval life. People can be fearful. People can be suspicious. People can also be compassionate. Often all at once. The old woman eventually guides Tom toward a quieter corner near the hearth. The dog follows faithfully. A second bowl of pottage appears. Nobody admits to bringing it. It simply arrives. A small act of mercy disguised as coincidence. Outside, wind rattles the shutters. Inside, candles burn lower. As the evening deepens, travellers begin sharing stories. One man speaks of a pilgrim who believed angels lived inside apple trees. Another tells of a woman who claimed she could predict storms by listening to cheese. The details are admittedly questionable. The cheese itself is unavailable for comment. Yet such tales reveal something about the age. The line between holiness, eccentricity, illness, wisdom, and superstition is often blurry. Some people regarded unusual behaviour with reverence. Others regarded it with fear. Sometimes the same person inspired both reactions before breakfast. Near midnight, an elderly farmer joins you on the bench. He lowers himself with the careful noises of someone negotiating with several stubborn joints. You aren't from here? No, you answer. He nods toward Tom. You wondering about him? You admit that you are. The farmer stares into the fire. For most folk, there's no easy answer. No. He scratches his beard. The priest says prayer helps. He counts on one finger. The herb wife says herbs help. A second finger. The monks say rest helps. A third. My wife says soup helps. A fourth. And what do you think? The farmer considers. Finally he shrugs. I think some huts live where nobody can reach them. The simplicity of the statement settles over the room. A log shifts in the hearth. Sparks rise briefly. You find yourself looking at Tom again. He has fallen asleep. His head rests against the wall. The dog sleeps against his boots. His face appears younger now. Less haunted. Merely tired. You wonder how many people across the centuries have looked exactly like this after carrying burdens invisible to everyone else. Thousands. Millions. The farmer eventually rises and wishes you good night. One by one, villagers drift home. Candles are extinguished. The fire sinks lower. The innkeeper spreads straw mattresses across the floor for travellers. You claim a space near the wall. The old woman remains awake a little longer. She checks on Tom, adjusts the blanket covering him, then finally settles herself nearby. The gesture is small, easy to overlook, yet it lingers in your mind. Outside, the church bell marks another hour. The sound drifts through the darkness. Beyond the village, winter fields sleep beneath starlight. Somewhere along distant roads, other wanderers sit beside other fires, carrying their own fears and confusions. And here in Brackenmere, beneath smoke-dark beams and flickering candlelight, a troubled man sleeps while his neighbours quietly decide what should be done next. By morning, many will suggest a visit to the parish priest. Prayer, guidance, perhaps confession. The village will seek answers where it knows how to seek them. For now, however, there is only the steady breathing of sleepers, the fading warmth of the hearth, the smell of wet wool drying by the fire, and the distant bell-counting hours that no one bothers to count anymore. You pull your blanket closer. The dog sighs in its sleep. Tom murmurs something unintelligible. The candles finally burn low enough that darkness takes most of the room. And beneath the old timber roof, the long medieval night carries everyone gently toward dawn. Before dawn, the alehouse wakes in pieces. First comes the fire, coaxed back from red ash by the innkeeper's wife, who crouches in the dimness and feeds it thin sticks with the patience of someone who has performed this little resurrection every morning of her life. Then comes the dog, stretching beneath the table as though personally responsible for holding up the whole building. Then comes the soft cough of sleepers, the rustle of straw, the groan of a traveller discovering that medieval hospitality includes warmth, shelter, and a floor apparently designed by a committee of stones. You sit up beneath your wool blanket. Cold has crept back into the room. It waits in the corners, under benches, around your boots, and in the sleeves of your tunic. The rushes on the floor are crushed flat from the night's bodies. A half-burned beeswax candle still leans in its holder near the worn wooden saint, and the air smells of smoke, stale ale, damp cloth, and the first stirring of oat porridge. Tom is already awake. He sits near the hearth, wrapped in the blanket the old woman gave him. The black dog remains beside him, loyal in the uncomplicated manner of dogs, which is one of the few systems in the Middle Ages that seems to function reliably. Tom's eyes are open, but he does not seem fully inside the room. He watches the low flames while his fingers move over the blanket's edge, counting threads no one else can see. Outside, the church bell rings for the first office of the day. Its sound crosses the village in slow bronze waves. The old woman, whose name you learn is Maud, rises stiffly and touches Tom's shoulder. "Come along," she says. "Father Aldred will hear us before the baking." Tom does not answer, but he stands. That is enough. You follow them into the morning because this is how the tale carries you onward, not with trumpet or banner, but with cold breath and uncertain footsteps. The village lies pale beneath frost. The mud of last night has stiffened into ridges, holding the prints of carts, hooves, boots, dogs, and chickens like a rough manuscript written in the road. Smoke lifts straight from the roofs. Somewhere, a woman beats frozen linen against a trough, and each strike sounds sharp in the dawn. Near a doorway, a child scatters grain for hens while wearing a cloak so large it may once have belonged to a small tent. The church stands at the far end of the green, squat and old, built of grey stone patched with darker repairs. Its tower leans only slightly, though no one can quite agree whether it has always leaned, or whether last winter's storms gave it an opinion. Yew trees crowd the churchyard, their branches twist over graves marked by simple stones, wooden crosses, and a few slabs worn smooth by rain and forgotten names. You step through the gate. Tom hesitates. For one moment his face tightens. Maud speaks softly, only the porch, then... The church porch is cold but sheltered. A small lamp burns before an image of the Virgin. The stone beneath your feet is uneven, hollowed by generations of villagers entering with baptisms, marriages, funerals, debts, fevers, and hopes. On the wall hangs a faded painting of St. Christopher carrying the Christ child through water, the paint chipped but the eyes still wide and solemn. Father Aldred appears from the side door, pulling his cloak tighter around him. He's a broad, tired-looking priest with ink on one thumb, straw on one sleeve, and the expression of a man who has already settled 3 arguments before breakfast. One was probably theological, one was probably about geese. The goose argument may have been worse. He sees Maud, then Tom, then you... His gaze pauses only briefly before softening. "Tom," he says, "you have had a hard night?" Tom looks past him toward the dark interior of the church. "The bells are below," he whispers. Father Aldred does not laugh, nor does he immediately scold. Instead he nods as though Tom has reported difficult weather. "Then we shall ask God to keep all bells in their proper towers." Maud exhales, almost smiling. Inside the church, the air is colder than outside, as churches often are, being made primarily of stone, reverence, and draughts. Rushes lie over the floor. Beeswax candles burn near the altar, their flames small and gold. The smell of wax, damp stone, old wood, and faint incense gathers around you. A painted rood screen separates nave and chancel, and beyond it the altar cloth hangs carefully folded, patched in 2 places with loving attention. Father Aldred leads Tom not to the altar, not at first, but to a bench near the side wall. "This matters?" He does not make a spectacle of him. He does not call the whole village to witness. He asks Maud when Tom last ate, where he slept, whether he struck anyone, whether anyone struck him, whether fever took him, whether he has family who might take responsibility. The questions are practical. Medieval care often begins with practical things, even when wrapped in prayers, food, warmth, kin, work, watchfulness, who has a key, who has patience, who has enough bread to spare. Maud answers quietly. You stand near a pillar and listen. Tom was found near the north field. He had been gone 2 days. He had not eaten properly. He spoke of his wife and daughter as if they were walking beside him. He frightened the children but harmed no one. He wept in the alehouse. He slept. Father Aldred folds his hands inside his sleeves. Grief has long teeth, he says. Some swear that sorrow can open doors through which strange voices enter. Others insist such voices are temptations, Still others say the body's humours turn black and heavy, especially in winter, when cold and damp settle into the bones and the blood moves sluggishly. Father Aldred, standing in his little village church with candlelight touching his face, seems unwilling to choose too quickly. He brings a small basin of holy water. Tom watches it with suspicion. Not drowning, Father Aldred says gently, only blessing. This earns the faintest flicker from Tom's mouth, almost humour, almost memory. The priest dips his fingers and marks the sign of the cross over Tom's brow. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Tom closes his eyes. For a breath, everything stills. The candle flames lean. The dog, who has somehow entered the church without anyone giving permission, sits near the door with an expression of deep innocence. This dog is now clearly part of the parish. Father Aldred prays quietly, not loudly, not theatrically. He asks protection for a sorrowing soul, wisdom for neighbours, rest for the troubled, and mercy for the dead. His words move slowly through the cold air. Maud bows her head. You lower yours too. Not because you understand every belief of this world, but because gentleness deserves respect wherever it appears. Tom begins to tremble. At once Maud reaches for him, but Father Aldred only pauses. Breathe, Tom. Tom's hands curl into fists. They sing under the floor, then listen to my voice above it. The priest begins the Lord's Prayer. Maud joins. After a moment, so do others. You had not noticed villagers gathering at the back of the church. The baker, the farmer from the alehouse, a girl carrying kindling, the reeve servant with the keys. They stand at a distance, uncertain, watchful, but present. The prayer fills the nave softly. Tom's breathing slows. Not cured, not transformed, not made simple for anyone's comfort. Only steadied. For now, that is often all care can offer in this age, a little steadiness, a little warmth, a little time before fear returns. After the prayer, Father Aldred gives Tom a small strip of cloth touched to a saint's reliquary, kept in the parish chest. The relic itself is doubtful. No one can quite agree whether it once belonged to a holy bishop, a local martyr, or someone's very impressive aunt. Yet villagers value such things not only for certainty, but for comfort. A thing held in the hand can help the heart feel less alone. Tom accepts the cloth. He presses it between his fingers. Maud promises to keep him by her hearth that day. Father Aldred says he will speak with the reeve, not to punish Tom, but to make sure someone watches if he wanders again. The priest also suggests broth, sleep, and perhaps a visit to the abbey if matters worsen. For the monks, they keep an infirmary and sometimes receive those who suffer in body or mind. Outside, morning has brightened. The villagers disperse slowly, as if reluctant to admit the moment is over. The baker returns to his ovens. The child with the oversized cloak chases hens from the churchyard. The reeve's servant locks and unlocks the same iron key on his belt, apparently to remind everyone that he possesses authority and possibly very little else. You remain near the porch as Tom steps back into the pale sunlight. He looks tired, but calmer. The dog follows him down the path. Maud notices and sighs. Well, if he's coming too, he can earn his keep by discouraging rats. The dog wags his tail, accepting employment without negotiation. The bell rings again overhead. This time Tom does not say it is beneath the ground. He only looks up. For a moment his face is unreadable. Then he walks beside Maud toward the village green, holding the blessed cloth in one hand while frost melts slowly from the ruts underfoot. You follow at a little distance, carrying with you the smell of beeswax, damp stone, and old prayers, and the uneasy knowledge that in this world, mercy and fear often kneel on the same cold floor. The frost softens by midday. Thin drops of water slide from thatched roofs. The frozen ruts in the road surrender to mud once more, as though the village cannot decide what shape it wishes to be. Brackenmere spends much of its existence somewhere between solid ground and swamp, certainty and uncertainty, much like the people who live there. You spend the morning helping Maud carry firewood, not because anyone asks, simply because standing idle while an elderly woman hauls logs twice your size feels difficult to justify. Tom helps too, at least for a while. His mood drifts like smoke. One moment he stacks wood carefully beside the cottage wall. The next he pauses, staring toward the distant marsh. Then he returns to work as if nothing happened. No one comments on it. The villagers have learned the rhythm of his days. By afternoon, another visitor arrives. Or perhaps another source of answers is more accurate. Because Father Aldred has offered prayer. And now the village turns toward a different kind of knowledge. Maud glances at Tom, then at the sky. I think we should see Edith. Tom does not object. That alone seems encouraging. You accompany them along a narrow path beyond the village. The road winds between hedges stripped bare by winter. Crows perch among twisted branches. Small patches of snow survive in the shadows where sunlight rarely reaches. After half an hour, you reach a cottage standing apart from the others. It sits beside a stream. Bundles of dried plants hang beneath the eaves. A row of clay pots lines the windowsill. The entire place smells faintly of mint, sage, smoke, and mysteries. This is the home of Edith, the village healer, the wise woman, the herb wife. Depending on whom you ask, the titles vary. The responsibilities remain largely the same. When people suffer ailments that priests cannot entirely soothe and physicians cannot readily reach, they often come here. Edith opens the door before anyone knocks. She's small, grey-haired and sharp-eyed. She studies Tom, then studies Maud, then studies you. Finally she says, "If all three of you stand outside much longer, winter will finish the conversation for us." You enter. The cottage is warm. Wonderfully warm. The hearth burns steadily. Dried herbs hang from beams overhead like green and brown chandeliers. Wooden shelves hold jars, roots, bundles of flowers, bits of bark, and objects whose purposes are difficult to guess. One shelf contains what appears to be a perfectly ordinary turnip. Another contains something that may once have been a turnip but now resembles an ancient curse. It is best not to ask. Edith gestures towards stools. Tom sits. The black dog curls immediately beside the fire. Clearly the dog has developed strong opinions regarding indoor accommodations. Edith settles opposite Tom. She does not rush. This becomes immediately obvious. Many people question him quickly. Edith waits. Silence stretches. The kettle hums softly. Finally Tom speaks. The bells are quieter today. Edith nods. What made them quieter? Tom thinks. Maybe the church. Maybe. She reaches for his wrist. Checks his pulse. Places a hand against his forehead. Studies his eyes. The examination appears simple, yet her attention is extraordinary. Complete. Undivided. In a world without laboratories, attention itself becomes a tool. Are you sleeping? Sometimes. Eating? Tom shrugs. Maud answers for him. Not enough. Edith nods again. No surprise crosses her face. She has likely heard similar stories countless times. Medieval healers encounter many forms of suffering. Fevers, injuries, childbirth, grief, exhaustion, loneliness, minds burdened beyond endurance. Not all wise women possess genuine skill. Some rely heavily on superstition, some on experience, many on both. Edith seems to belong to the practical variety. She rises and begins gathering herbs. A little rosemary, a little chamomile, a handful of something fragrant you cannot identify. She places them into steaming water. The cottage fills with a gentle scent. Drink this tonight, she tells Tom. Will it stop the voices? Asks Maud. Edith pauses. The answer matters. You can see it. Finally she shrugs. Maybe. A moment later she adds, it might help him sleep. The honesty feels refreshing. No grand promises. No miracle claims. Just possibility. In the medieval world, uncertainty often travels alongside treatment. No one can quite agree whether certain herbs heal because of natural properties, divine blessing, or simply because people feel cared for when receiving them. Perhaps all three matter. Edith prepares additional remedies. A small pouch filled with lavender. A mixture for bathing. Instructions to avoid too much ale. This final recommendation receives universal skepticism. Avoiding ale in medieval Europe is rather like avoiding weather. Still, the advice is given. As she works, Edith tells stories. Not dramatic stories. Gentle ones. She speaks of a shepherd who spent months convinced wolves were following him. A widow who heard her husband's voice for years after his death. A young woman whose terrible nightmares vanished after long rest and proper meals. People think every strange thing has one cause, Edith says while grinding herbs. It rarely does. Tom watches her. Actually watches. More present than before. You don't think I'm cursed? Edith snorts. No. You don't? No. What if I am? She considers. Then it's the most boring curse I've ever seen. Tom blinks. For the first time all day he laughs. A genuine laugh. Small, brief, but real. Even Maud smiles. The dog thumps its tail. The atmosphere changes. Only slightly. Yet enough. You begin to understand something important. Part of healing is not merely removing pain. Sometimes it is creating moments where pain does not occupy the entire room. The afternoon drifts onward. Outside, sunlight weakens. Inside, Edith continues speaking with Tom. She asks about his daughter, his wife, the cooper's shop he once owned, the barrels he used to make. At first his answers come slowly, then more freely. Memories emerge, not all sad, some happy, some ordinary. His daughter stealing apples. His wife singing while baking bread. A market fair years ago. A dog he once owned before this current dog apparently appointed itself successor. The stories gather around the hearth. Warm. Human. Alive. No miracle occurs. Tom still hears things others do not. Still drifts occasionally. Still carries grief heavy enough to bend a life. Yet for several hours he remains anchored. Present. Connected. That matters. As evening approaches, Edith prepares one final item. A small charm. Not elaborate. Just woven thread and herbs tied together. Father Aldred might raise an eyebrow at it. Other priests might object entirely. Such tensions exist throughout medieval life. Prayer and folk practice often coexist uneasily, yet villagers frequently use both. Why choose one source of hope when two are available? Edith hands the charm to Maud. For his room, Maud accepts it. Tom watches silently. Will it work? He asks. Edith smiles. Some swear that it does. And you? I think knowing someone cared enough to make it is worth something. The answer lingers in the warm air. Outside, dusk settles across the fields. The first evening bell begins ringing from the church tower far away. Tom listens. He watches carefully. The old fear does not immediately return. He simply listens, then lowers his head. They're above ground today. Edith nods. Good. The dog stands, stretches, employment apparently concluded for the day. You prepare to leave. Herbs bundled, remedies gathered, the cottage growing dim around you. As you step outside, cold air brushes your face. The village lies waiting beyond the fields, smoke rising from chimneys, windows glowing amber, the church bell continuing its slow conversation with the twilight. Tom walks beside Maud, a pouch of herbs in one hand, the blessed cloth from Father Aldred in the other. Prayer and herbs, church and cottage, faith and folk wisdom. In the Middle Ages, people often reach for every source of comfort available. Sometimes one helps, sometimes another, sometimes neither. Sometimes what matters most is simply that no one faces suffering entirely alone. The path home stretches ahead through fading light, and somewhere beyond the village, monastery bells wait in the distance, though you do not yet know how important those bells will soon become. By the next morning, rain has returned. It taps softly on Maud's roof before dawn, then thickens into a steady grey whisper that fills the village lanes and darkens every timber, thatch, and stone. The mud accepts this new offering with enthusiasm. It clings to boots, cartwheels, hems, dog paws, and possibly thoughts. Even the chickens seem offended by it, though chickens are offended by most developments. You wake near Maud's hearth, where the last of Edith's herbs hangs in the air as a faint sleepy sweetness. Tom has slept, not peacefully perhaps, but long enough that Maud's face looks less tight when she stirs the morning porridge. The black dog lies across the threshold like a small furry tollgate, forcing everyone to step over him with care. No one has named him yet. This seems increasingly rude, considering he has joined the story with more commitment than several villagers. Tom sits wrapped in a cloak, holding the little blessed cloth from Father Aldred between his fingers. The bells have been quiet, he says, but his eyes keep drifting toward the north road. Father Aldred arrives after sunrise, his cloak wet at the shoulders, his boots rimmed with clay. He speaks with Maud in a low voice. The abbey lies only half a day away if the roads behave, which roads rarely do. The monks there keep a guest house and an infirmary. They offer shelter to travellers, pilgrims, the old, the fevered, and sometimes those whose minds wander into difficult places. No one calls it a cure. That is important. They call it rest. They call it watching. They call it charity. They call it placing Tom under kinder eyes for a little while, away from gossip, away from the field where he keeps hearing buried bells, away from winter's long grip on the village. No one can quite agree whether monasteries are places of perfect peace or merely places where human trouble is arranged in neater rows. Still, by mid-morning, Maud has tied food into cloth. Father Aldred has given a short prayer at the door, and you find yourself walking beside Tom along the rain-dark road toward the abbey. The dog follows. No one argues. The road bends between bare hedges and wet fields. Rain beads on your cloak. Your breath hangs pale before your face. Tom walks slowly, sometimes steady, sometimes stopping to listen. When he pauses, Maud pauses too. Father Aldred has remained behind in the village, but his words seem to travel with you. Keep him warm. Keep him fed. Do not crowd him when fear rises. The landscape opens into low pasture. Sheep huddle beneath a crooked hawthorn. A plough stands abandoned beside a field, its iron blade dull with wet earth. At a roadside shrine, someone has left a pilgrim badge, a scrap of blue cloth, and 3 small stones stacked with careful hope. Edith's herb pouch hangs from Maud's belt, darkened by rain but still fragrant when the wind shifts. Near midday, the abbey bells begin. You hear them before you see the walls. The sound rolls through the rain, deeper and steadier than the village bell, not loud exactly, but wide. Tom stops in the road. Maud turns. You do too. His face has gone pale, but he does not cover his ears. He listens. Above, he says at last. Aye, Maud answers, above. The abbey emerges through mist like a grey ship run aground among winter fields. Its outer wall is built of worn stone, patched in places where old damage has been repaired. Beyond it rise the church tower, steep roofs, chimneys, and the bare black arms of orchard trees. Water spills from gargoyles along the eaves, their carved faces looking delighted to be useful after centuries of waiting. At the gatehouse, a lay brother opens the wicket and peers out. He's round, red-cheeked, and holding a crust of bread. This gives him an air of both holiness and interruption. Maud explains. The brother listens, chewing slowly. Then he nods and lets you in. The abbey yard smells of wet stone, hay, smoke, and cabbage from the kitchens. Monks move between buildings with heads bowed beneath hoods. A cart loaded with turnips stands near a storehouse. Somewhere a novice struggles with a basket of laundry, proving that even sacred communities require someone to deal with socks. You are led to the guest house, a long low building beside the outer court. Inside, the air is warmer. Rushes cover the floor. A hearth burns at one end. Wooden beds line the wall, each with a blanket folded over straw ticking. A few travellers already rest there, a pilgrim with swollen feet, a coughing merchant, an old woman carrying a little reliquary box she watches with impressive suspicion. The guest master arrives soon after. Brother Martin, thin, calm, ink-stained at the cuffs. His eyes move carefully over Tom, not with fear, but with attention like Edith's, though quieter and more cloistered. He asks Maud what has happened. He asks Tom what troubles him. When Tom says the bells were under the earth, Brother Martin does not laugh. Bells are strange things, he says. They travel where we do not expect. Tom studies him. His answer appears acceptable. Brother Martin gives him broth first. Not a sermon. Not an examination. Broth. Medieval wisdom may be tangled with superstition, humours, relics, and fear, but it also understands that a cold, hungry person should eat before being questioned about the condition of his soul. The broth is thin, hot, and salted. Tom drinks it slowly while the dog sits hopefully nearby, working very hard to look spiritually neglected. After the meal, Brother Martin shows Maud where Tom may sleep. A corner bed, near the hearth. Not locked away, not displayed. Watched, yes. Sheltered, yes. The abbey does keep stronger rooms for those who might harm themselves or others, rooms with oak doors and iron fittings, but Brother Martin speaks of them only briefly, and not for Tom tonight. Here, care can be gentle, but it can also become custody. The line is thin, and even now it is hard to tell whether some choices are protection, fear, or both wearing the same hood. Later, as rain dims the afternoon windows, you follow Brother Martin through a passage toward the infirmary. Maud stays with Tom, who has begun drowsing by the fire. The dog remains under his bed, possibly now a monk. The infirmary is brighter than you expected. Narrow windows let in grey light. Beds stand in rows with wool blankets. Bundles of herbs hang near the hearth. A monk grinds something in a mortar. Another reads softly from a psalter beside a fevered man. The room smells of lavender, vinegar, damp wool, and boiled barley. Brother Martin speaks softly as he walks. Some come here with broken limbs. Some with aches. Some with old age. Some with melancholy so deep they cannot rise. Some rave from fever and later remember nothing. Some hear voices for years. Some are thought blessed. Some are feared. Some swear that demons trouble the mind. Others speak of black bile, cold humours, bad air, moon influence, grief, or divine testing. In the abbey, all these explanations live side by side, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. The monks pray, bleed, bathe, feed, restrain, comfort, and record. Their certainty changes from day to day, which may be more honest than they admit. In the scriptorium, Brother Martin shows you a book in which earlier cases have been noted. The parchment pages are stiff and cream-coloured. A candle burns nearby, though carefully, because one spark in a room full of manuscripts would be a theological and administrative disaster. Ink-stained scribes bend over their desks. Their quills scratch softly, like mice with education. Brother Martin does not let you read everything, but you glimpse enough. A woman who would not speak after childbirth. A boy with visions after fever. A knight who woke screaming each night after battle. A widow who refused food because she believed herself already dead. Beside each entry are prayers, treatments, outcomes, guesses. Some recovered. Some worsened. Some wandered away. Some remained. The records are not modern. They are not neat. But they reveal something tender beneath the roughness someone noticed. Someone wrote their suffering down. Someone considered it worth remembering. When you return to the guest house, dusk has begun gathering beneath the rafters. Tom sleeps near the hearth. Maud sits beside him, mending a tear in his sleeve with slow, even stitches. The dog's nose rests on Tom's boot. Rain whispers against the roof. From the abbey church comes the low chanting of monks at office, rising and falling like breath in a stone chest. You sit near the fire and let warmth seep into your hands. Outside, the world darkens. Inside, broth simmers, candles burn, prayers continue, and a troubled man is allowed, for this night at least, to be more than his fear. The abbey bells ring again. Tom stirs, his eyes open. He listens. Then very softly he says, above, Maud's needle pauses. Brother Martin looks up from the doorway. And no one says more than needs saying. The abbey wakes long before the sun. A bell sounds in the dark, deep and patient, and the whole place seems to breathe itself back into duty. Somewhere beyond the guesthouse wall, sandals whisper along stone passages. A door opens. A latch clicks. A monk coughs with great restraint, as if even his lungs have taken vows of moderation. You lie still beneath your wool blanket, listening. The fire has burned low. Only red coals remain in the hearth, pulsing softly beneath a crust of ash. The guest house smells of damp cloaks, straw bedding, cold smoke, and the faint sweetness of the herbs Maud brought from Edith. Beside Tom's bed, the black dog sleeps with his chin on his paws, accepting Abbey life with the seriousness of a creature who has discovered regular meals. Tom is awake. You see the shine of his eyes in the dimness. He listens to the bell. Not with terror. Not quite with peace. With effort. As if each ringing note must be placed carefully inside him before the next one arrives. Maud wakes too and turns her head, above. Tom waits through another toll. Then nods. Above? This small word carries the warmth of a larger mercy. At dawn, Brother Martin returns with bread, watered ale, and a bowl of barley pottage thick enough to support a small spoon upright, though no one attempts this miracle officially. He tells Maud that the prior has agreed Tom may remain for several days. Rest, regular meals, prayer, work if he can manage it, quiet if he cannot. Nothing grand, nothing swift. Medieval care rarely moves like lightning. It moves like someone carrying soup across uneven stones. After eating, Tom is invited to join the morning procession. Invited, not forced. This matters too. Maud looks uncertain, but Tom stands, clutching the little strip of blessed cloth from Father Aldred. You walk with them into the abbey yard, where frost silvering the stones has begun to melt beneath a pale sky. Monks gather near the church door in dark wool habits. A lay brother carries a candle protected by one cupped hand. Another holds a small reliquary wrapped in cloth of faded red silk. The reliquary is said to contain a fragment from a saint associated with troubled minds and heavy sorrows. Some swear that those who pray before it sleep more peacefully. Others whisper that the relic once failed to cure a nobleman's son but did help a cow start giving milk again, which complicates the theological record. No one can quite agree whether the power lies in the relic, the prayer, the hope, or the simple act of being held within a community for an hour. The procession begins. Slowly. So slowly that even your tired legs approve. The monks chant in low voices, their Latin rolling beneath the arches like warm breath under stone. You do not understand every word, but you feel the shape of it: plea, praise, mercy, repetition. Repetition is important here. Bells repeat, prayers repeat, days repeat. The mind, when frightened, sometimes needs the world to become predictable again. Tom walks beside Maud. The dog tries to follow into the church and is gently redirected by a novice, who loses the argument within 3 steps. The dog enters anyway and settles near the back with complete innocence. The novice looks toward heaven, perhaps asking whether obedience applies to animals with persuasive eyes. Inside, candles burn along the nave. The abbey church is larger than the village church, colder, and filled with shadows that seem older than anyone present. Stone pillars rise like tree trunks. Painted saints gaze from the walls, their colours dim but still tender. Near the altar, the reliquary is placed on a cloth. Its metal fittings catch the candlelight in small gold flashes. Tom watches from a side bench. Brother Martin stands near, not touching him, but close enough. The chanting continues. At first Tom is still. Then his breathing changes. His fingers tighten around the cloth. Maud sees it. So do you. The sound, the candles, the stone, the nearness of the altar, any of these might comfort him, or overwhelm him. Medieval rituals can steady the troubled, but they can also stir fear, especially when every symbol is thick with meaning. Even now, it is hard to tell whether Tom trembles from reverence, memory, terror, or the ache of too many sleepless nights. Brother Martin leans closer. Look at the candle, he murmurs. Tom's eyes shift. There, only the flame. The candle flickers. Tom breathes. The chant moves around him, slow and even. After a while, his grip loosens. The moment passes, not as a triumph, as a narrow bridge crossed carefully and missed. When the service ends, the prior blesses those gathered. A few villagers from nearby farms approach the reliquary. One woman touches a scrap of cloth to it for her sick husband. A boy with a bandaged hand stares solemnly, perhaps expecting sparks. Nothing visible happens. Medieval holiness often has poor stagecraft. Tom does not touch the relic at first. He only stands near it. Finally, Maud whispers, "For rest." Tom steps forward. He presses Father Aldred's cloth gently against the reliquary. Then he closes his eyes. No one rushes him. The abbey seems to hold its breath. When he opens his eyes, he looks tired, but less scattered. He returns to the bench and sits heavily, as if his bones have remembered their weight. Brother Martin gives him honeyed water afterward. The monks also prescribe a light fast, not starvation. A careful simplifying of food broth, bread, herbs, no heavy meat, no strong ale. In their view, fasting may clear the body, humble the soul, and make prayer easier to hear. In practice, it also prevents Tom from drinking too much, which Edith would approve of with a very sharp nod. Through the day, rhythms gather around him. Prime, terza, sext, none. Bells mark the hours. Meals arrive at set times. The guesthouse fire is tended. A monk reads aloud from a life of a saint who once lived in a forest and was fed by birds. The story is peaceful until you realise the birds were probably better organised than most households. Tom listens. Sometimes he drifts. Sometimes he murmurs to someone unseen. But whenever the bell rings, Brother Martin quietly asks, "Above?" And Tom answers, "Above." By afternoon, he's taken into the cloister garden. The rain has stopped. The air smells of wet earth and rosemary. Bare fruit trees stand along the wall. In one corner, medicinal herbs grow in tidy beds: rue, betony, sage, lavender, feverfew, and plants whose names the monks pronounce with impressive confidence. A novice sweeps the walkway, pushing fallen leaves into a basket. Brother Martin gives Tom a small task. Not barrel making, not anything sharp, only sorting dried beans in the kitchen yard. Good beans into one bowl, stones and spoiled ones into another. It is simple work, repetitive, useful. No one calls it treatment, but it is treatment of a kind. Hands doing steady work can sometimes help a mind find its edges again. Tom bends over the bowl. Maud sits nearby, spinning wool from a distaff. You help badly, discovering that medieval bean sorting requires more attention than expected and offers no glory whatsoever. The dog supervises. Poorly. Now and then Tom speaks. Not much, but more clearly. He remembers a winter fair. He asks whether Maud's roof still leaks. He tells Brother Martin that good barrel staves must be seasoned slowly, or they split when bent. Brother Martin listens as if this is wisdom from a desert father. Perhaps it is. Late in the day, another small ritual takes place. In the infirmary, the monks prepare a warm bath with herbs for a man suffering from sleepless agitation. Tom is offered washing 2 warm water, clean linen, a fresh tunic from the storehouse. Privacy is imperfect, warmth is brief, and the tub has hosted more strangers than anyone wants to imagine. But clean skin and dry cloth are not small gifts in winter. Maud washes Tom's torn sleeve separately. You sit by the hearth afterward while his hair dries. He looks almost like the Cooper he once was. Not restored, not cured, but visible beneath the sorrow. At supper, he eats broth and bread. He does not ask for ale. The monks chant Compline after dark, the final office of the day. The church glows with candles. Outside, wind moves through the cloister. Inside, voices rise gently into the rafters. Tom sits between Maud and Brother Martin. You sit just behind them, wrapped in your cloak. The day has been full of relics, fasting, blessings, herbs, bells, work, warmth, and watchfulness. None of it is simple. Some of it may help because of faith, some because of routine, some because Tom is fed and safe, some because people look at him with patience instead of only fear. The last prayer fades. Silence settles. A candle gutters near the wall, bending low before righting itself. Then the abbey bell rings once more. Tom does not flinch. He closes his eyes. Above, he whispers, and in the dim, breathing stillness of the abbey church, that word is enough for the night. Morning comes with a hard white frost. It lies over the abbey yard like sifted flour, brightening roof tiles, cart handles, bare branches, and the backs of patient stones. The air bites your fingertips as you step outside the guest house, and your breath rises in pale threads before your face. Somewhere near the kitchens, a lay brother chops turnips with the grim devotion of a man who has accepted that winter is mostly turnips wearing different moods. Tom has slept again. Not perfectly. Once in the night he woke murmuring, and Brother Martin sat beside him until his breathing slowed. But no one shouted. No one dragged him into the cold. No one declared the whole matter solved or doomed. A candle was lit, water was offered, and the dog lifted his head, judged the situation manageable, and went back to sleep. After breakfast, the reeve arrives from Brackenmere. You recognise his servant first, the narrow man with the belt of iron keys. Behind him walks Reeve Oswin, broad-shouldered, fur-collared, and damp at the hem from the road. He carries authority like a heavy cloak, useful in bad weather but uncomfortable indoors. He bows to the prior. He nods to Maud. He looks at Tom. Tom looks at the floor. The abbey, for all its charity, cannot keep him forever without agreement. There are questions of land, work, safety, parish responsibility, and household duty. Medieval mercy must often pass through practical gates, and those gates tend to have clerks standing beside them. By midday, you find yourself walking with Maud, Tom, Brother Martin, the reeve, and the key-heavy servant toward a nearby manor hall, where the local Lord Steward is holding court. The road runs between frozen fields. Crows rise from the furrows. A cart creaks ahead of you, carrying sacks of grain and one goose that seems deeply opposed to legal proceedings. The manor hall stands on a low rise beyond a ditch and timber fence. Smoke rises from its roof hole. Men and women gather outside, stamping their feet against the cold. Some have come over rent, some over boundary stones, some over stolen hens, broken hedges, unpaid labour, and accusations involving a pig of apparently criminal intelligence. Inside, the hall is dim and smoky. Rushes cover the floor. A fire burns in the central hearth, and smoke climbs upward, though not all the way out, because medieval architecture often believes lungs should participate in heating arrangements. At the high end sits the steward beneath a faded hanging. He is not noble himself, but he represents nobility, which is almost as powerful and far more available on Tuesdays. Cases are heard one by one. A widow asks for confirmation that her son may hold their strip of land. Two brothers argue over a plough ox. A miller is accused of taking too much grain as payment, and everyone present appears to have expected this eventually. Then Tom's matter is called. The hall shifts. Not dramatically. But you feel attention turn. Maud stands beside Tom. Brother Martin stands a little behind. The reeve speaks first. He explains that Tom has wandered, frightened children, spoken to unseen things, and left his work undone. He also says Tom has harmed no one. This last part matters, and you notice Maud looking at him with relief. The steward asks whether Tom has kin. Maud answers that his wife and daughter are dead, his brother lives 2 villages away but will not take him, and his old cooper's shop has fallen into disrepair. The steward asks whether he has property. A little. Not much. Some tools. A small cottage. A share in a garden patch. Then comes the question that hangs like cold smoke. Can he keep himself? No one answers quickly. Tom's hands twist together. The dog, barred from the hall after a brief diplomatic crisis at the door, barks once outside, perhaps offering testimony. No one can quite agree whether a person like Tom is helpless, holy, ill, foolish, cursed, or merely grief-struck beyond ordinary measure. Yet the Manor Court does not live in uncertainty as comfortably as fireside talk does. It must decide who is responsible if Tom wanders into the marsh again, if he fails to pay dues, if he breaks something, if someone claims he frightened a child, if he is cheated out of his tools by a neighbour with quick fingers and slow morals. In medieval law and custom, a troubled mind can become a matter of guardianship. Someone may be appointed to watch over goods. Someone may be charged with keeping the person safe. Sometimes this protects, sometimes it controls. Sometimes both sit so close together that even now, it is hard to tell which one is speaking. The steward turns to Tom. Thomas Cooper, he says, do you understand why you stand here? Tom looks up. For a moment his eyes seem clear. Because I walked where I should not. A murmur moves through the hall. The steward nods. And will you stay where Maud and the priest tell you? Tom swallows. I try. The answer is not perfect. It is honest. Brother Martin speaks then, quietly, with permission. He says Tom has slept, eaten, worked with beans, listened to bells without distress, and shown no wish to harm anyone. He recommends that Tom remain under care for a few more days at the Abbey, then return to Maud's hearth through winter, with the parish watching. His tools should be kept safe, his cottage should not be seized, his garden should be tended by neighbours until spring, with fair account kept. This is surprisingly sensible. The steward rubs his chin. The key-heavy servant writes awkward notes on a wax tablet. Maud promises Tom may sleep near her hearth if the village helps with bread and firewood. The baker offers 2 loaves a week, muttering that they will be small loaves because charity is holy but flour is expensive. A farmer promises turnips. Someone else offers kindling. The miller offers nothing until several people look at him, at which point he contributes a sack of meal with the expression of a man being martyred by generosity. A dry little laugh passes through the hall. Tom almost smiles. The steward strikes the table lightly. So ordered. The decision settles. Imperfect. Fragile. But real. Tom is not cast out. Not locked away. Not declared free to vanish into the marsh. He's placed within a net of obligation priest, neighbour, widow, abbey, court, hearth, bread, watchfulness. A medieval net is full of holes. But sometimes it catches. The court moves on to the criminal goose, which is accused of ruining a cabbage bed. The goose shows no remorse and is therefore widely believed guilty. You step outside with Maud and Tom. The winter sun hangs low over the fields. The dog rushes to Tom as though reunited after years of exile instead of one smoky legal hearing. Tom bends and scratches his ears. Maud wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, then pretends she has not. Brother Martin looks toward the Abbey Road. You will come back with us tonight, he says gently. Tom nods. Above the manor roof and smoke rises into pale air. Behind you, the hall returns to rents, boundaries, beasts and bargains. Ahead, the road waits, frozen at the edges, muddy in the middle, exactly like most human arrangements. You walk back slowly through the afternoon light, carrying the sound of the steward's wooden strike, the smell of rushes and smoke, and the knowledge that in this world, care is rarely pure feeling. It is also bread measured weekly, tools guarded from thieves, firewood promised before snow, and neighbours made responsible for one another whether they feel noble about it or not. As the Abbey bells begin to ring in the distance, Tom stops, listens, then says almost calmly, above. Maud answers, aye, and the dog, having no opinion on bells but great confidence in roads, trots ahead into the frost. The next day, the Abbey releases you back onto the road. Not forever, not with grand ceremony, simply with bread wrapped in cloth, a little cheese, a blessing at the gate, and Brother Martin's reminder that roads are kinder when people do not walk them alone. The morning is pale and cold. Frost clings to the grass beyond the outer wall, and the Abbey tower rises behind you in grey silence, its bells resting for the moment like great sleeping birds. Tom walks with Maud at first. The black dog trots beside him, now unofficially called Hob, because the kitchen boy insists that any dog who steals crust with such confidence must have a name fit for a household spirit. No one argues. Hob accepts the name immediately, which suggests he may have been waiting for humans to catch up. You follow the pilgrim road south for a while, not because Brackenmere lies that way, but because Maud wishes to visit a roadside shrine before returning home. She says it will do Tom good. Brother Martin says it will do all of you good. The Reeve says nothing, which is his most generous contribution so far. The path winds between hedges and open fields, then dips into a stretch of woodland where bare branches lace against the winter sky. The earth is damp underfoot. Fallen leaves rot into dark sweetness. Somewhere a woodpecker taps at a trunk with the persistence of a tiny carpenter who charges by the hour. Pilgrims move along the road in ones and twos. You see a woman with a scallop badge sewn to her cloak. A lame man carrying a staff polished smooth by many miles. A merchant's widow walking barefoot for a vow, though she has wrapped her feet in rags because holiness may be earnest, but frost remains persuasive. Among them are others whom villagers might call strange. A young man who sings psalms to birds. An old woman who laughs whenever the wind changes. A thin pilgrim with bright eyes who claims St. Michael speaks to him from puddles, which makes everyone step carefully around puddles for the rest of the morning. No one can quite agree whether such people are holy, troubled, foolish, blessed, or merely fond of attention. On the pilgrim road, the answer matters less than it does in a village. Roads loosen categories. A person who seems odd at home may seem almost ordinary among relic seekers. Penitents, beggars, traders, pardoners, wandering friars, and one man carrying a rooster in a basket as repayment for a vow no one fully understands. Tom watches them all. For once, he does not seem the strangest person present. This appears to comfort him. At midday, you stop near a roadside fire where several travellers share food. Smoke curls upward through the bare trees. Someone has hung a small pot from 3 sticks, and thin leek broth bubbles inside. Maud contributes bread. You add cheese from the abbey. Hob contributes hope and receives a crust. A pilgrim in a patched cloak sits across from Tom. His name is Osbert, though he says he was once called something else before a fever took his memory for 3 months and returned only portions of it. He wears 3 pilgrim badges, one from Canterbury, one from Walsingham, and one so bent that it might depict either a saint or a surprised fish. Osbert speaks gently. I used to hear my dead brother behind me, he tells Tom. Tom looks up sharply. Did he stop? Osbert warms his hands over the fire. Sometimes that is not stopping. No, says Osbert, but sometimes is something. The words settle quietly between them. Some swear that pilgrimage cures madness because saints intervene along the road. Others say the walking itself helps the rhythm of feet, the change of air, the food shared with strangers, the chance to become someone other than the village problem for a few miles. Even now, it is hard to tell whether healing comes from heaven, movement, exhaustion, kindness, or the simple mercy of being allowed to keep going. After eating, a wandering friar joins the circle. He's cheerful, muddy, and full of stories. He tells of a man in York who believed he was made of glass and begged people not to touch him. He tells of a woman in Lincolnshire who spoke only in rhymes after a lightning storm. He tells of a hermit who lived in a hollow oak and advised nobles so wisely that no one mentioned he argued daily with squirrels. The stories are told without cruelty. Mostly, there is laughter. Yes, but soft laughter, the kind that admits the world is wide and people are fragile. Tom listens. Maud listens. You listen too, feeling the warmth of the fire on your knees and the cold at your back. The friar eventually leans on his staff. God makes many kinds of minds, he says. Some fit neatly into a house, some need a road. Maud frowns. Roads are dangerous. Aye, says the friar, so are houses. No one answers that. Above the trees, clouds thin. The day brightens, and the little company begins moving again. The shrine lies a mile farther on, beside a ford where the water runs shallow over stones. It is a humble place, a wooden cross, a painted figure of a saint, a niche filled with tokens left by travellers, pins, ribbons, pebbles, a child's shoe, a broken comb, a scrap of parchment marked with a prayer. Medieval hope often looks like ordinary objects left where grief cannot carry them any farther. Tom stands before the shrine. He does not kneel. He only looks. Then he reaches into his pouch and removes a small shaving of wood. Maud recognises it before you do. A piece from his cooper's shop. He places it in the niche. For Ellen, he says. His wife's name. Maud's eyes soften. And for little Joan, he adds. His daughter? The road grows very quiet. No bell rings. No vision comes. No saint steps down from paint and timber. Only winter water moving over stones. Only breath and cold air. Only a man placing grief somewhere outside himself for a moment. That, too, is a kind of ritual. You cross the ford carefully, boots slipping on wet stones. Hob bounds through water with unnecessary joy, soaking everyone within range. Maud scolds him. Hob receives this as praise. By late afternoon, the road turns back toward Brackenmere. The pilgrims continue south, their badges catching pale light. Osbert raises a hand in farewell. The friar calls out that if Tom ever needs advice from squirrels, he knows a hermit. Tom actually laughs. It is small, but it travels with you. The fields of Brackenmere come into view under a low sky. Smoke rises from the village chimneys. The church tower stands beyond the green. Somewhere, The same bell that once seemed buried waits in its proper height. Tom slows. You feel more tense beside him. Then the bell rings. Once. Twice. Across the fields. Tom closes his eyes. His lips move. You expect above. But instead he says, home. Maud's hand finds his sleeve. The road beneath your boots is muddy again. Of course. The village is no gentler than before. There will still be gossip, fear, questions, and days when Tom's mind wanders beyond reach. Yet something from the pilgrim road has come back with him, the knowledge that he is not alone in strangeness, not the only one who hears the dead, not the only soul walking between sorrow and shelter. As dusk gathers, you approach the first cottages. Hob trots ahead like a herald of absolutely no official authority. And behind you, far down the road, the pilgrims vanish into winter light, carrying badges, vows, sore feet, doubtful stories, and all the wandering hopes of the age. Dawn arrives beneath a blanket of low grey clouds. Brackenmere wakes slowly. Smoke rises from chimneys. Roosters announce themselves with confidence greatly exceeding their achievements. Somewhere a cartwheel squeaks in protest, sounding as though it has personally endured every hardship in Christendom. You stand outside Maud's cottage and watch the village prepare for market day. This happens only once each week, yet it transforms everything. The quiet lanes fill with movement. Farmers arrive from surrounding hamlets. Merchants unload bundles from wagons. Women carry baskets of eggs. Children run ahead of their parents despite repeated instructions not to. A pig escapes almost immediately. The pig's success is brief but emotionally satisfying. Tom stands beside you. He looks tired but steady. The days at the Abbey have not changed who he is. The voices have not vanished. His grief remains. Yet something inside him seems less tangled than before. Perhaps it is the regular meals. Perhaps the prayers. Perhaps Edith's herbs. Perhaps the pilgrim road. Perhaps the simple fact that several people have spent days treating him as a person instead of a problem. No one can quite agree. The market square fills steadily. Canvas stalls rise. Tables appear. Barrels are rolled into place. A fish seller arranges smoked eels. A baker stacks dark loaves. A tinker displays kettles that look as though they have survived at least 3 wars and won 2 of them. The air smells of bread, livestock, damp wool, wood smoke, and humanity, which is a very specific smell, one difficult to describe and impossible to forget. At first, everything feels cheerful. Market days often do. People enjoy gathering. They enjoy news. They enjoy seeing neighbours. They enjoy pretending they are only here for necessities when everyone knows they are also here for gossip. And gossip arrives quickly. Tom notices it before you do. The glances, the whispers, the conversations that pause when he approaches. Not everyone behaves this way. Far from it. But enough. A group of boys watches him from near the well. One mimics talking to invisible companions. The others laugh. Not cruelly at first. Simply thoughtlessly. The way children often repeat what they hear adults say. Tom lowers his eyes. Maud immediately turns toward them. The boys discover urgent business elsewhere. You suspect they will remember that look for years. Nearby, however, another scene unfolds. The baker greets Tom warmly. Good to see you, Upright. Tom nods. The baker hands him a small roll. No charge. No announcement. Just bread. A quiet kindness. That is how market day reveals the village. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Fear beside generosity. Suspicion beside affection. Judgment beside patience. You walk among the stalls. Tom follows. Some villagers avoid him. Others greet him normally. Most occupy an uncertain middle ground. Many medieval people possess no clear framework for understanding troubled minds. They interpret behaviour through religion, experience, superstition, local custom, and personal history. If someone behaves strangely but remains harmless, responses vary enormously. Some offer help. Some offer distance. Some offer both simultaneously. Near the cloth merchant's stall, you overhear 2 women speaking. He seems better. For now, Father Aldred says the Abbey helped. Maybe a pause. Then, my cousin was like that after the fever. The conversation continues. Not mocking. Not fearful. Merely trying to understand. This happens often. History remembers dramatic accusations and harsh punishments. Those certainly occur. Yet much of daily life consists of ordinary people puzzling over situations they do not fully comprehend. The market bell rings. Trade intensifies. Coins change hands. Weights are checked. Arguments bloom and fade. A travelling musician appears with a small harp and begins playing near the well. Children gather immediately. Adults pretend not to. Tom stops to listen. The melody is simple. Gentle. Old. Something shifts across his face. Memory, perhaps. Or longing. The musician notices. Without comment, he continues playing. A second tune follows. Then a third. Music occupies a curious place in medieval ideas about health. Many believe certain melodies calm the spirit. Others think harmonious sounds help restore balance within the body. Monks sometimes recommend music for melancholy. Physicians occasionally do as well. Even those who doubt such theories often admit that a beautiful song can ease a difficult afternoon. Tom stands listening for nearly half an hour. Nobody bothers him. Nobody stares. For a little while, he's simply another listener in the crowd. Then the trouble begins. Not serious trouble. Not violence. Something quieter, which can sometimes hurt more. A merchant from another village arrives. He does not know Tom. He only hears rumours. Unfortunately, rumours travel faster than carts. The merchant glances toward Tom. That's him. A nearby farmer nods reluctantly. The one who hears voices. The farmer instantly regrets participating. The merchant chuckles. Best keep him away from our wares. The remark is not loud. Yet Tom hears it. You see it happen. His shoulders stiffen. The colour drains from his face. The marketplace suddenly feels larger. Colder. The musician continues playing. People continue buying bread. Life continues. Yet for Tom, the moment hangs in the air. The merchant notices too late. Embarrassment flickers across his features. He expected laughter, not consequences. Before anyone can respond, another voice speaks. The old farmer from the alehouse. The same one who once told you some hurts live where nobody can reach them. He helped rescue my sheep during the flood. Silence. The merchant blinks. The farmer continues. He fixed 3 barrels for me years ago. Another pause. He buried his wife. Longer silence. He buried his daughter. Now nobody says anything. The merchant lowers his eyes. A few villagers nod. The old farmer returns to examining onions as though he has merely commented on weather. The moment passes, but not entirely. Tom stands very still, then quietly says, "Thank you." The farmer shrugs. "Buy me ale someday." A faint smile appears. Small ale. Obviously. The exchange earns a few chuckles. The tension eases. Market life resumes. Yet the lesson remains. Reputation matters enormously in small communities. When people remember your humanity, mercy becomes easier. When they forget it, fear grows quickly. Later in the afternoon, Father Aldred arrives. He moves through the square, greeting villagers, blessing a new baby, settling an argument over market tolls, and somehow preventing a dispute involving cabbages from becoming a theological issue. This alone qualifies as pastoral excellence. He eventually joins Tom near the churchyard. How goes the day? Tom thinks carefully. Some people are kind. Father Aldred nods. And some are not. The priest studies the crowd. So the world remains unchanged. Tom unexpectedly laughs. A real laugh. Brief but genuine. The priest smiles too. Beyond them, bells ring from the church tower. Market closing approaches. Merchants begin packing goods. Children chase one another through muddy lanes. Farmers load wagons. The travelling musician gathers his coins. As the crowd slowly disperses, you notice something remarkable. Not dramatic. Not miraculous. Simply remarkable. Tom has spent an entire day among people. Not hidden. Not locked away. Not wandering alone. Present. Part of the village. And perfectly accepted. Sometimes judged. Sometimes defended. Sometimes misunderstood. Yet present. The Middle Ages often lacked effective treatments for mental illness. It lacked modern diagnoses. It lacked scientific understanding of many conditions. What it did possess, sometimes it was community. Flawed community. Uneven community. Community capable of cruelty and compassion in equal measure. As evening settles over Brackenmere, market stalls vanish one by one. The square empties. Mud reclaims the road. The church bell marks the hour. Tom listens, then looks around the village green. At the baker, the farmer, Father Aldred, Maud, even Hob, who has somehow acquired half a sausage from unknown sources. The bell rings again. Tom smiles faintly, and this time, before anyone asks, he says, "Above." The market square grows quiet again. By the following morning, Brackenmere has returned to its usual rhythm of smoke, chores, damp boots, and patient endurance. The stalls are gone. The merchants have rattled away along muddy roads. Only a few trampled patches of straw remain to prove that half the countryside recently gathered there to trade onions, gossip, and strong opinions. You spend the early hours helping Maud carry water from the well. Tom joins you. He works steadily. Not cheerfully exactly, but steadily. That word has become precious. The bucket rope creaks. The cold air smells faintly of wood smoke and wet earth. Hob trots alongside, occasionally inspecting puddles as though they might contain important messages from distant kingdoms. Father Aldred appears shortly after sunrise. He carries a letter, or rather, what passes for a letter in a small medieval parish-folded parchment, sealed with wax, delivered by a rider who looks thoroughly annoyed by the weather. The priest reads it. His eyebrows rise. Then he folds it carefully. A request from Ashcombe Keep. Maud pauses. The Lord's Manor. The steward there seeks guidance. This attracts everyone's attention. Even Hob lifts his head. Ashcombe Keep stands several miles away, overlooking the surrounding countryside from a rocky rise. Its lord holds authority over numerous villages, fields, mills, and forests. Most people in Brackenmere rarely have reason to visit. Father Aldred hesitates, then continues. A member of the household requires care. The silence that follows is thoughtful. Everyone understands what he means. Word has reached the keep about Tom's stay at the Abbey. About Brother Martin. About Father Aldred. About the village's efforts. Some noble households face similar troubles. They simply hide them better. Or try to. By noon, you find yourself travelling once more. This time toward Ashcombe Keep. Father Aldred accompanies you. So does Tom. Not because anyone expects him to solve anything. Rather because the priest believes seeing another person struggle may help him feel less alone. Maud remains behind to tend her cottage. Hob naturally refuses to remain behind. The road climbs gradually through rolling farmland. Winter clouds drift overhead. Ravens circle distant trees. Ahead, Ashcombe Keep rises from the landscape. Stone walls. Square towers. Narrow windows. A gatehouse overlooking the road. The entire structure appears determined to distrust visitors, which, to be fair, was often the purpose of castles. As you approach, guards admit you through the gate. The courtyard bustles with activity. Servants carry firewood. Stable boys lead horses. A smith hammers iron near the outer wall. The sounds echo between stone buildings. Unlike Brackenmere, where everyone knows everyone's business, the keep feels layered. Compartmentalized. Secrets have more places to hide here. You are escorted into the great hall. A fire burns beneath a smoke-blackened roof. Colourful banners hang from beams overhead. Rushes cover the floor. Servants move quietly between tables. The steward greets Father Aldred warmly, then leads your small group into a side chamber. The contrast is striking. The room is comfortable. Very comfortable. A thick rug covers part of the floor. A proper feather mattress sits against one wall. A chest carved with intricate designs stands near the hearth. The window contains actual glass. Not much glass, but enough to remind you that wealth can purchase remarkable luxuries. And yet the atmosphere feels heavy, almost mournful. The steward lowers his voice. It is Lady Eleanor, the Lord's younger sister. You soon learn her story. Years earlier, after a difficult illness and several family tragedies, Eleanor began experiencing periods of deep melancholy. Sometimes she remained in bed for weeks. Sometimes she spoke to people who were not present. Sometimes she became terrified without obvious cause. At other times she seemed perfectly well. The household has tried many remedies, physicians, prayers, relics, herbs, pilgrimages. Nothing has fully resolved the problem. And because she belongs to a noble family, another concern shadows everything. Reputation, inheritance, marriage alliances, political consequences, things ordinary villagers rarely worry about. Tom listens quietly. His expression grows thoughtful. The steward continues. Most visitors never see her. There it is. The difference. When a poor villager struggles, everyone knows. When a noble struggles, walls rise. Doors close. Curtains draw. Privacy becomes another form of confinement. You are eventually permitted to visit. The chamber lies within a quieter wing of the keep. 2 servants stand outside. Not guards exactly, yet not entirely unlike guards. Inside, the room is warm. A fire burns steadily. Books rest upon a table. Embroidery lies unfinished in a basket. Fresh rushes cover the floor. Everything appears comfortable, almost luxurious. Lady Eleanor sits beside the window. She cannot be much older than Tom. Perhaps 30. Perhaps a little more. Her clothing is elegant. Her hair carefully arranged. Yet her eyes hold the same distant quality you have seen before. The same invisible weight. She looks toward Father Aldred, then toward Tom. Immediately something changes. Recognition. Not personal recognition. Something deeper. The recognition of shared experience. You hear them too? She asks softly. The room falls silent. Tom considers, then nods. Sometimes, Eleanor looks away. Relief flickers briefly across her face. Not happiness. Relief. For a few minutes nobody speaks. The fire crackles. Outside, wind brushes against the shutters. Finally, Eleanor breaks the silence. They keep telling me I'm fortunate. Tom glances toward the feather mattress. The carved chest. The warm chamber. Are you... She laughs quietly. The sound contains very little amusement. I have 6 blankets. Tom nods. I had one. Neither continues, yet somehow they understand each other perfectly. The conversation unfolds slowly after that. Not therapy. Not treatment. Simply 2 people speaking. Eleanor describes long periods where she cannot rise from bed. Tom describes wandering fields while hearing voices. Eleanor speaks of panic. Tom speaks of grief. Both describe loneliness. The servants remain near the door. The steward watches carefully. Father Aldred listens. You listen too, and gradually a truth emerges. Wealth changes circumstances. It does not eliminate suffering. Eleanor possesses comfort, food, warmth, protection. Yet those advantages create new burdens. She feels hidden, observed, managed. The household protects her. The household also isolates her. Even now, it's hard to tell where protection ends and confinement begins. At one point, Eleanor gestures toward the window. I can see the village from here. A cluster of cottages spreads across distant fields. I haven't walked there in 3 years. Tom frowns. Why not? The steward shifts uncomfortably. Eleanor answers first. They worry. Tom studies her, then says something remarkable. They worry about me too. The statement hangs in the room. Simple. True. Unexpectedly powerful. Eleanor smiles. A real smile. Small but genuine. The first one you've seen. Later, the household physician arrives. A learned man with careful manners and impressive sleeves. He discusses humours. Melancholy. Diet. Sleep. Exercise. Fresh air. Blood balance. Theories common among educated healers. Some are mistaken. Some surprisingly insightful. Many reflect genuine attempts to understand conditions that remain mysterious. Eleanor listens politely. Tom listens politely. Hob falls asleep. Arguably the wisest participant. As afternoon fades toward evening, the visit concludes. Father Aldred offers prayers. The steward expresses gratitude. Eleanor stands near the doorway as you prepare to leave. Then she speaks to Tom. Do the bells trouble you still? Tom thinks. Less. Why? He considers carefully. Perhaps more carefully than anyone expects. Finally he shrugs. People helped. The answer seems almost disappointingly simple. Yet Eleanor nods slowly, as though it makes perfect sense. When you leave the keep, twilight spreads across the countryside. Ashcombe's towers darken against the sky. Smoke rises from village chimneys below. The road home stretches ahead. Tom walks quietly. Father Aldred too. Neither seems eager to break the silence. Eventually the priest speaks. Different roof. Tom nods. Same storm. The priest smiles. Aye. Behind you, Lady Eleanor remains inside her warm stone chamber. Ahead, Brackenmere waits beneath gathering darkness. Two very different worlds, yet linked by the same fragile human struggles. And as the first evening bell echoes across the fields, Tom listens once more. Then continues walking. The road down from Ashcombe Keep is slick with evening damp. You descend carefully between frost-hardened banks and low hedges beaded with mist, while the keep behind you fades into a dark shape against the winter sky. Tom walks beside Father Aldred, quiet after the meeting with Lady Eleanor. Hob trots ahead, tail raised, occasionally turning to make sure the slower two-legged members of his company have not made any poor decisions involving cliffs, ditches, or introspection. By the time you reach Brackenmere, the village fires are lit. Smoke lies beneath the thatch. A thin moon rises over the church tower. Maud is waiting at her doorway with a lantern in hand, and though she says nothing at first, the way her shoulders loosen when she sees Tom tells you enough. Medieval affection often wears practical clothing. It says, you're late, when it means, I feared you were lost. It says, there's pottage, when it means, I kept warmth for you. Inside, the cottage smells of onions, barley, smoke, and dried lavender. Tom eats slowly. Father Aldred stays long enough to warm his hands and tell Maud of Lady Eleanor, though not too much, for noble secrets treated like fine glass admired, handled carefully, and often more expensive than useful. The next morning brings another visitor. A physician. Not the elegant man from Ashcombe, but one travelling through the region on his way to a nearby town. His name is Master Julian, and he arrives on a tired brown horse with saddlebags full of bottles, folded cloth, instruments, and the confident expression of someone who owns several Latin words and intends to use them. Father Aldred brings him to Maud's cottage. Maud looks doubtful. Tom looks wary. Hobbs sniffs the physician's boot and immediately distrusts him, which may or may not be a professional opinion. Master Julian removes his gloves and sits near the hearth. He is not unkind, that is worth saying. His face is narrow, his beard trimmed, his robe lined with fur at the collar. He smells faintly of vinegar, cloves, and horse. He asks Tom questions about sleep, appetite, dreams, fear, sadness, voices, fevers, old injuries, and whether his melancholy worsens under certain moons. Tom answers as best he can, sometimes clearly, sometimes not. The physician listens, nodding with scholarly gravity. Then he begins to explain. In his understanding, the body is governed by humer's blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much black bile may produce melancholy, heaviness, fear, strange thoughts, visions, and sorrow without clear cause. Cold and dry conditions may worsen it. Winter may deepen it. Solitude may feed it. Certain foods may trouble it. Strong ale, Salted meat, old cheese, and too much idleness are viewed with suspicion. Which is unfortunate news for several villagers who consider these the foundations of civilization. No one can quite agree whether such theories are wisdom, guesswork, or a tidy way of arranging mysteries that refuse to be tidy. Yet Master Julian speaks with care, and not every part of his counsel is foolish. He recommends warmth, regular meals, moderate work, clean bedding, music, gentle company, sleep, avoiding excessive ale. Again, this final instruction lands poorly. Maud folds her arms. How much is excessive? The physician pauses, perhaps recognizing that he has entered dangerous local territory. Less than makes him worse. This answer survives. Then comes the part everyone expected and no one wanted. Bleeding. Master Julian suggests that if Tom's agitation returns strongly, a careful letting of blood might restore balance. Not much, he says. Only enough. Perhaps from the arm. Perhaps aided by leeches, if good ones can be found. He speaks of it calmly, as one might speak of trimming a hedge. Tom goes pale. Maud's mouth tightens. Father Aldred says nothing, but his eyes sharpen. In the Middle Ages, bloodletting is common. It is used for fevers, pains, imbalances, prevention, and conditions of mind and body alike. Some swear by leeches, others fear them. Some monks keep careful charts showing which days are best for bleeding and which are perilous, depending on stars, saints' days, and bodily condition. Even now, it is hard to tell how often such treatment comforted, harmed, or merely gave everyone the feeling that something official had been done. Master Julian sees Tom's fear and softens. Not today, he says. Today I would rather hear whether music calms you. Tom blinks. Music. Aye. So the physician asks whether anyone in the village has a harp, pipe, or voice that does not frighten livestock. Maud thinks. The miller sings. Father Aldred shakes his head at once. No. There is a silence. Then Tom laughs. A small laugh, but clear. Master Julian smiles as though laughter itself has diagnostic value. Perhaps it does. Later that afternoon, the travelling musician from market day is found lodging near the baker's shed. He is persuaded for bread and ale to play inside Maud's cottage. Space is limited, so everyone crowds in awkwardly moored by the hearth. Tom on a stool, Father Aldred near the door, Master Julian observing, you tucked beside a stack of firewood, and Hob in the centre as though the performance has been arranged for him personally. The musician plays softly. No market tunes, no bright dance, only slow melodies that rise and fall like breathing. Tom listens. At first his fingers twitch. Then they still. His shoulders lower. The room seems warmer. Outside, the winter afternoon dims. The window is only oiled cloth, so the light comes through blurred and golden. Steam rises from a pot of herb water. Rushes rustle underfoot when anyone shifts. The music threads through smoke and shadow, touching nothing sharply. Master Julian watches, not with triumph, with interest. He speaks quietly to Father Aldred. There are physicians who write of harmony in the soul, he says. The body seeks order. Father Aldred answers, so does a parish. Does it find it rarely before Easter? The physician smiles. When the music ends, Tom remains still for several breaths. Then he says, I knew that song. The musician lowers his harp. Many do. My wife sang it. Maud looks toward the fire. Tom's face tightens, but he does not break apart. He hums a little of the tune. Only a few notes. Rough. Quiet. But his own? The cottage holds the sound gently. Master Julian leaves behind a list of recommendations written in a hand so decorative it borders on secrecy. Father Aldred squints at it and concludes that it prescribes broth, sleep, mild exercise, pleasant music, and fewer frightening conversations. Maud declares that she could have said most of that for free, then accepts the paper anyway and places it near the scent's cloth, Edith's charm, and the lavender pouch. Prayer. Herbs. Relic. Music. Humours. Soup. The household has become a small museum of medieval approaches to suffering. No single one is enough. Together, perhaps, they form a kind of shelter. That evening, you step outside while Tom rests by the hearth. The village is quiet. Frost returns along the lane. The church tower stands against a deepening blue sky, and the first star appears above the fields. Somewhere far off, Ashcombe Keep keeps its secrets behind stone walls. Somewhere beyond that, the abbey bells wait for their next hour. Inside Maud's cottage, the musician plays one last tune before leaving. Soft. Almost drowsy. You hear Tom hum along for 2 lines. Then the sound fades into the crackle of the fire. No cure has arrived in a shining cup. No theory has solved the mystery. But Tom has eaten, slept, worked, prayed, walked, spoken, listened, and been heard. In a world of uncertain medicine, that is no small thing. The night settles. The bell rings, and from within the cottage, Tom's voice comes quietly, almost steady. Above, winter tightens its grip during the following week. The mornings arrive silver with frost. Water troughs glaze over during the night. The fields beyond Brackenmere lie quiet beneath pale skies, and the trees stand stripped bare, their branches scratching faint patterns against the clouds. Life slows. Not completely. Medieval life never truly stops. Animals still need feeding. Bread still needs baking. Wood still needs chopping. But winter presses everything into a quieter rhythm. You begin noticing the sound of bells more clearly. Perhaps Tom does too. The church bell, the abbey bells far away, the occasional distant bell from travellers passing along the road. Time itself seems measured in bronze. For several days, Tom remains relatively steady. He helps Maud. He carries wood. He repairs part of a fence. He spends long stretches sitting beside the hearth with Hob asleep at his feet. Then one night everything shifts again. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Like weather. The signs appear gradually. Less sleep. Longer silences. Eyes drifting toward empty corners. The old tension returning to his shoulders. Maud notices first. She always does. Father Aldred notices second. You notice shortly afterward. By the third day, Tom admits the voices have become louder. The bells are moving again. The words hang heavily in the cottage. Maud closes her eyes briefly. Not in frustration. In sadness. Because everyone understands something important. Recovery is not a straight road. Not in the Middle Ages. Not now. Not ever. Sometimes improvement arrives, then retreats, then returns. Like sunlight between winter clouds, Father Aldred decides another visit to the abbey would be wise. Not because Tom has failed. Not because anyone is angry. Simply because more support may help. And so, once again, you travel through frost-covered fields toward the monastery. This time the journey feels different. Familiar. Less frightening. The road remembers you. The abbey remembers you too. Brother Martin greets Tom by name. The Kitchen brothers greet Hob with visible enthusiasm. One novice secretly slips him sausage before remembering that monastery discipline probably contains rules about bribery. The infirmary receives Tom once more. This time you spend several nights there yourself. Observing. Listening. Learning. The infirmary becomes a world unto itself. Long rows of beds. Herb-scented air. Quiet footsteps. Low voices. Candlelight reflecting from stone walls. Patients arrive and depart continuously. Some stay days. Some stay months. Some never fully leave. An elderly woman suffering confusion sits near the window each afternoon and knits endlessly. A former soldier wakes screaming from dreams. A young man recovering from fever speaks nonsense for hours at a time. A widow spends entire days staring into the fire. The monks care for them all. Not perfectly, not scientifically, yet sincerely. You begin noticing how much of medieval care revolves around observation. Watching. Waiting. Keeping company. Brother Martin spends hours simply sitting beside people. Sometimes speaking, sometimes not. Presence itself becomes medicine. One evening you ask him whether that ever feels inadequate. The monk studies the fire, then nods. Often, the honesty surprises you. He pokes a log gently. We like answers? Aye. But suffering rarely asks questions that simple. The fire crackles. Outside, wind brushes against the shutters. Brother Martin continues. Sometimes all we can offer is not leaving. The words remain with you? Not leaving? Such a small phrase. Yet perhaps one of the most important. The infirmary also reveals darker realities. Compassion exists here. So do limits. One patient, a large man named Walter, experiences violent episodes. When frightened, he strikes out. Several people have been injured. The monks cannot simply hope for the best. Sometimes Walter must be restrained. Not cruelly, not punitively, yet restrained all the same. You witnessed this one evening. Soft straps. Careful hands. Quiet voices. No anger. Only necessity. Walter weeps afterward. So do two of the monks. The scene lingers heavily in your thoughts. Because it illustrates a difficult truth. Medieval caregivers often face impossible choices. How do you protect someone without imprisoning them? How do you preserve dignity while preventing harm? How do you distinguish fear from caution? No one can quite agree. Then, or now, Tom watches Walter from across the room. Later he asks Brother Martin a question. Will that happen to me? The monk answers immediately. No. Tom studies him. You don't know that. Brother Martin pauses, then nods. No, I don't. The honesty matters. Perhaps more than reassurance would. Winter evenings in the infirmary develop their own rhythm. Candles are lit. Herbs are prepared. Prayers are said. Patients settle beneath blankets. The smell of lavender mingles with smoke. Monks move quietly between beds. One reads from a manuscript. Another warms broth. A third changes bandages. The work never fully ends. Among the books kept by the infirmary are records of previous patients. Brother Martin occasionally shares excerpts. Not names, only stories. A merchant who spent months convinced invisible dogs followed him. A nun whose grief after losing her sister left her unable to speak. a carpenter who heard music no one else could hear. Some recovered completely, some partially, some not at all. Yet each entry exists, written carefully, preserved, remembered. The act feels significant. History often forgets people like these. The monks, imperfectly, resist that forgetting. One snowy evening, a physician visits from a larger town. He examines several patients, discusses humours, prescribes herbs, recommends bloodletting for 2 cases. Against expectations, he also recommends conversation, long walks, music, good sleep. Even learned medicine occasionally stumbles toward wisdom. Tom improves slightly after several days. Not dramatically. The voices remain, the grief remains, yet the panic softens. He begins helping in the kitchen, sorting vegetables, carrying water, simple tasks, familiar tasks. Brother Martin deliberately provides work whenever possible. Hands remember things minds forget, he explains. One afternoon, Tom spends hours repairing a broken barrel. The Cooper inside him briefly reappears. Focused. Confident. Useful. When the repair is finished, he actually smiles. The expression transforms him. For a moment you glimpse the man he once was before sorrow reshaped his life. The monks notice too. No one says anything. They simply allow the moment to exist. That night, snow begins falling. Soft flakes drift past the windows. The infirmary grows quieter than usual. Patients sleep. Candles burn low. The wind hushes beneath fresh snow. You sit awake beside the hearth. Brother Martin joins you. Neither of you speaks for some time. The silence feels comfortable. Finally, from across the room, Tom's voice emerges softly. Brother. Martin looks up. The bells. The monk waits. Tom listens carefully. Outside, far beyond the walls, faint abbey bells ring through snowy darkness. Above. Clear. Steady. Tom closes his eyes. Then nods. Above. Brother Martin smiles. Around you, the infirmary settles deeper into stillness. Patients breathe quietly beneath blankets. Snow gathers outside. Candles flicker gently. Herbs hanging from the beams sway almost imperceptibly. And in this warm stone refuge, surrounded by prayer, uncertainty, kindness, limitations, hope, and all the imperfect tools medieval people possess, another winter night slowly passes. No miracle has occurred. No great revelation. Only people caring for one another as best they can. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes it is all anyone has. And tonight, beneath falling snow and distant bells, it seems to be enough for now. Snow remains through the next morning. It lies thick along the abbey wall, softening the stones, smoothing the cart ruts, and turning the herb garden into a white, silent page. The world seems gentler beneath it, though anyone who has had to fetch water in frozen boots knows this is mostly decorative kindness. Tom wakes calmer. Not cured, never so neatly, but rested enough to sit by the infirmary hearth and help Brother Martin mend a leather strap on a water bucket. Hob sleeps nearby, having become so comfortable among monks that one novice claims the dog now looks disappointed when people speak during prayers. By midday, a messenger arrives from Brackenmere. He's one of the baker's sons, red-faced from cold and breathless from the road. He brings troubling news. In a nearby hamlet called Alderwick, fear has begun to gather around a woman named Agnes. She is widowed. She lives near the edge of the woods. She has long been considered strange. She speaks to herself. She gathers herbs at odd hours. She once predicted a storm, though in winter this is less prophecy than reasonable guessing. Now a child has fallen ill, a cow has miscarried, and someone claims to have seen blue lights near Agnes's cottage. The villagers whisper of curses, of possession, of witchcraft. Father Aldred has been asked to come. Brother Martin goes with him. And somehow, because roads in this tale keep pulling you onward, you go too. Tom insists on coming. Maud, who has arrived from Brackenmere with the messenger, looks ready to refuse. Then she sees his face, not curiosity, recognition. He knows what it is to become the shape people fear. So she allows it. The road to Alderwick runs through frozen fields and a strip of dark woodland where snow falls from branches in soft sudden clumps. Crows call overhead. The air smells of pine, damp bark, and distant smoke. No one speaks much. Even Hob trots quietly, as if sensing that this is not a sausage-based journey. Alderwick appears near dusk. It is smaller than Brackenmere, a cluster of cottages around a pond filled with ice. Smoke rises from low roofs. The villagers have gathered near the churchyard, bundled in cloaks, faces tight with cold and suspicion. Fear feels different from concern. Concern leans forward with open hands. Fear closes doors and looks for someone to blame. Agnes stands apart from the crowd. She is thin, middle-aged, wrapped in a patched cloak. Her hair has escaped its covering in grey wisps. She looks exhausted, not wicked. Beside her, a basket of herbs lies overturned in the snow. A man points toward it. Charms, he says. Edith would have called them remedies. A priest might call some harmless. A frightened village calls them evidence. No one can quite agree whether Agnes is ill, lonely, wise, unlucky, or merely disliked by the wrong neighbour at the wrong time. But in winter, when hunger sharpens tempers and sickness enters cottages without knocking, uncertainty can turn dangerous. Father Aldred steps between Agnes and the crowd. His voice remains calm. Who is ill? A woman holding a child begins to cry. The child is feverish. Brother Martin examines him gently, checking his brow, his breathing, the rash at his neck. He asks what the boy has eaten, whether others are sick, whether the well water smells foul. Practical questions again. Blessedly practical. The villagers look dissatisfied. Practical questions are less satisfying than blame. A cow miscarried. A child sickened. Milk soured. A shadow crossed the moon. In another season, these might be misfortunes. In a fearful winter, they become a pattern. Tom stands beside you, very still. Then a boy in the crowd notices him. That one hears voices too, he whispers loudly. Several heads turn. Maud moves closer to Tom. The air tightens. For one uneasy moment, fear reaches for him as well. Father Aldred sees it. So does Brother Martin. But Tom surprises everyone. He steps forward. Not far, only enough to be seen. I heard bells under the earth, he says quietly. The crowd falls silent. Tom's voice trembles, but he continues. They were not there. No one moves. I was afraid. Others were afraid of me. But Maud gave me food. Father prayed. Brother Martin gave me work. The bells came back above. His words are plain. Rough? Not eloquent. All the stronger for it? Agnes looks at him with sudden tears in her eyes. The villagers shift uneasily. Shame does not arrive all at once. It creeps in through small cracks. Brother Martin lifts the sick child close to the church lantern and frowns. This is fever, he says, not witchcraft. Someone mutters, How can you know? Brother Martin answers gently, I cannot know all things, but I know fever when it burns a child's skin, and I know fear when it burns a village. That lands quietly, hard. Father Aldred orders warm broth, clean cloths, and fresh water from a different well. He asks who has been ill nearby. Several hands rise, slowly. Pattern changes shape, not curse, contagion, bad water, perhaps winter sickness, ordinary danger, which is frightening enough without inventing extra demons for decoration. Agnes still trembles. A woman steps forward and picks up the spilled herbs. Not warmly, not yet, but she picks them up. This matters. Some swear that villagers accuse such women because they truly believed evil worked through them. Others say accusation often followed loneliness, poverty, quarrels, or inconvenient difference. Even now, it is hard to tell where belief ends and cruelty begins. Perhaps they are braided together like rough wool. Night deepens. The sick child is carried inside. Agnes is not punished. Not tonight. Father Aldred insists she sleep in a neighbour's house, but not alone by the woods. Brother Martin asks her about the herbs and finds mostly feverfew, sage, betony, and dried mint. Useful things. Ordinary things. Things that smell faintly of Edith's cottage and warm water on cold evenings. You help gather the basket. Agnes thanks you without looking up. Tom hands her one fallen bundle. Their eyes meet. Neither says much. They do not need to. On the walk back, the snow begins again. Soft flakes drift through darkness. Maud takes Tom's arm, hob-trots between you, occasionally vanishing into white patches and emerging proud of himself. The road feels longer in silence. At the edge of Brackenmere, the church bell rings. Tom stops. Listens. The sound passes over the snowy fields, clear and high. Above, he says. Maud answers, aye. But his face remains solemn, because tonight he has seen how quickly fear can move from whispers to accusation, from illness to blame, from one lonely cottage to a crowd at dusk. You walk on toward Maud's hearth, carrying the smell of snow, herbs, smoke, and frightened voices. And behind you, in Alderwick, a village sits awake beside a fevered child, a spared woman, and the uneasy knowledge that mercy sometimes arrives only just in time. The days after Alderwick pass quietly. Not perfectly. Quietly. Which, in winter, is often the better blessing. Snow comes and goes. Frost paints silver edges along fences each morning. Smoke rises from cottage chimneys and drifts low across the fields. The roads remain muddy beneath their thin white coverings, preserving the medieval tradition of our disappointing travellers in every season. Tom returns to familiar routines. Wood to split, water to carry, small repairs around Maud's cottage. Some days are easier, some are harder. The voices still visit. The grief still lingers. Yet something has changed since the Abbey, since the Pilgrim Road, since Alderwick. The difficult moments no longer feel entirely solitary. Others know, others understand, at least a little, and that knowledge matters. One pale morning, Father Aldred arrives with news. A group of pilgrims is passing through Brackenmere on their way north. They intend to stop at a roadside shrine several miles away before continuing toward a larger abbey. The priest wonders whether Tom might benefit from joining them for a day. Not a permanent journey. Not another wandering disappearance. Simply a walk. Company. Fresh air. A road shared with others. Maud studies Tom carefully, then nods. So once again, you find yourself following a winter road. The pilgrim company numbers perhaps 15 souls. Old men, young women, carpenter, a widow, a former soldier, 2 monks from a distant priory, a shepherd carrying a wooden staff decorated with ribbons, and a cheerful baker's daughter who seems determined to become friends with every living creature she encounters, including Hob. Especially Hob. The dog accepts her admiration with admirable professionalism. The road stretches across open countryside. Frozen fields shine beneath weak sunlight. Crows move among bare trees. The air smells clean and cold. Pilgrims walk at different speeds. Groups form and reform. Conversations begin and end. Stories pass from one traveller to another like shared bread. No one asks Tom many questions. This helps. They simply allow him to walk among them, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent. The rhythm feels natural, comfortable. As the morning progresses, you notice something curious. Many pilgrims carry burdens invisible to strangers. One old man limps badly. A widow still wears black years after her husband's death. A young woman suffers terrible nightmares. The former soldier startles whenever crows burst suddenly from hedges. Everyone carries something. Not all suffering announces itself. No one can quite agree whether pilgrimage heals because people meet saints, because they leave familiar surroundings, or because walking beside others reveals that pain is rarely unique. Perhaps all three contribute. Around midday, the company pauses beside a roadside fire. Someone produces bread. Someone else produces cheese. A monk shares dried apples. The cheerful baker's daughter somehow discovers more food than should logically exist. Medieval journeys often depend upon people quietly sharing what little they have. Tom sits beside the former soldier. For a long time, neither speaks. Then the soldier points toward a distant line of trees. I don't sleep much. Tom nods. Me neither. The soldier scratches his beard. Sometimes I hear things. Tom looks up. The soldier continues. Not voices. A pause. Battle sounds. Tom understands immediately. No explanation needed. The conversation ends there. Yet both seem lighter afterward. Recognition can be strangely comforting. The pilgrims continue onward. The shrine appears late in the afternoon. It stands beside a small bridge crossing a narrow stream. Simple. Weathered. Beloved. Ribbons flutter from nearby branches. Tokens rest beneath the saint's image. Coins. Buttons. Bits of cloth. Little offerings left by countless travellers over many years. The pilgrims gather quietly. Some pray. Some rest. Some simply stand. The winter sun hangs low. Golden light touches the snow. The scene feels peaceful. Almost timeless. A monk begins singing softly. Others join. The melody drifts across the frozen landscape. Not loud. Not formal. Just human voices sharing warmth against the cold. Tom listens. Then, unexpectedly, he joins them. Only a little. Only for a few lines. Yet the sound is unmistakably his. The baker's daughter notices. She smiles. Says nothing. Which is exactly the right response. The song ends. Silence follows. Gentle silence. The kind that feels full rather than empty. Father Aldred eventually moves beside Tom. You sang? Tom shrugs. A little. Aye. The priest looks toward the fading sunlight. You used to sing. Tom thinks. My wife did. The words might once have broken him. Now they simply hurt. There is a difference. A painful difference. Yet an important one. The company begins preparing for the journey home. Lanterns are lit. Cloaks tightened. Boots adjusted. The winter evening gathers around you. As you leave the shrine, something happens that might seem small to anyone watching from afar. A young pilgrim slips on ice near the bridge. Before anyone else can react, Tom reaches out and steadies him. Simple. Instinctive. The young man laughs nervously. Thank you. Tom nods. The moment passes, yet you find yourself thinking about it long afterward. For months, perhaps years, people have viewed Tom primarily as someone needing help. Protection. Guidance. Supervision. Care. All necessary things. Good things. Yet tonight he is the one offering help. The one steadying another traveller. The one preventing a fall. Brother Martin once said that hands remember things minds forget. Perhaps Tom's hands remember being useful. Being needed. Being part of the world rather than separate from it. Darkness deepens during the walk home. Lantern light flickers across snowy paths. The pilgrims share stories to pass the time. Some funny. Some sad. Some impossible to verify. One elderly man insists he once met a saint disguised as a goose. No one believes him. Not entirely. Yet no one completely dismisses the possibility either. This is still the Middle Ages after all. By the time Brackenmere appears ahead, stars shine above the fields. The church tower rises against the night sky. Smoke drifts from cottage chimneys. Home. The pilgrims gradually separate. Farewells are exchanged. Promises made. Blessings offered. The baker's daughter hugs Hob before departing. The dog tolerates this with dignity. Tom watches them go. The road grows quiet again. Father Aldred stands beside him. So, Tom looks toward the distant church bell. The familiar sound begins ringing across the frozen fields. Clear. Steady. Above. For a few moments nobody speaks. Then Tom says, "I thought I was the only one." The priest follows his gaze toward the stars. "No." Tom nods slowly. "No." The realization seems to settle deep inside him. Not a cure. Not a miracle. Simply truth. Others struggle. Others grieve. Others hear echoes of things long gone. Others walk difficult roads. And sometimes those roads cross. Sometimes they share bread. Share songs. Share stories. Share silence. The church bell rings again. The sound drifts gently through the winter darkness. Tom listens, and smiles faintly. Not because his burdens have vanished, because he no longer carries them entirely alone. You walk together toward Maud's cottage. Warm light glows from the window. Smoke curls from the chimney. The scent of stew waits somewhere inside. Behind you, the pilgrim road stretches away beneath stars. Ahead, the village settles into evening peace. And for the first time in many months, Tom's steps seem a little lighter upon the frozen ground. Morning comes softly at the abbey gate. You arrive there just as the eastern sky begins to pale, walking beside Tom, Maud, Father Aldred, Brother Martin, and Hob, who trots ahead with the solemn confidence of a dog certain that dawn has been arranged for his benefit. Frost glitters along the roadside grass. The fields lie quiet beneath a thin veil of mist. Beyond the abbey wall, the tower rises grey and still, and for once no bell is ringing. The world seems to be holding its breath. Tom is asked to come here, not because he is desperate, not because fear has driven him from Brackenmere, but because he wishes to return something. In his hand he carries the little strip of cloth Father Aldred once blessed, then touched to the abbey relic. It is worn now from being held so often, softened by fingers, darkened at the edges. A small, humble thing, carrying no visible power except the power of having stayed with him through difficult nights. At the gatehouse, the Ranelagh brother opens the wicket. He sees your group and smiles. "Hub," he says first. This is perhaps not the correct order of greeting, but no one challenges him. The abbey yard is waking slowly. A novice carries water from the well. Smoke begins rising from the kitchen chimney. Somewhere a wooden door groans open. The air smells of wet stone, cold straw, and the first baking bread. Inside the guest house, travellers still sleep beneath wool blankets, each carrying some private sorrow, sore foot, unpaid debt, or questionable vow involving poultry. Brother Martin leads you toward the church. Tom walks without haste. His face is tired, but peaceful in a fragile way, like a candle protected by cupped hands. Maud watches him closely, though less fearfully than before. Father Aldred walks with his hands tucked into his sleeves, his breath white in the cold. Inside the abbey church, candles already burn. Their small flames shimmer against stone pillars and painted saints. The air is hushed and cold. The reliquary rests near the altar, wrapped in faded cloth. No one can quite agree whether it truly holds what the monks believe it holds, but by now you understand that certainty has never been the only thing people come seeking. Tom steps forward. For a long moment he stands before the relic. Then he places the worn strip of cloth beside it. Not as payment, not as proof, as thanks. "For the nights I slept," he says. His voice is quiet. Brother Martin bows his head. Maud wipes her eyes and pretends very badly that the cold is responsible. Tom turns then and looks back through the church door toward the pale morning outside. The abbey bell begins to ring overhead, slow, deep, clear. Tom listens. You listen with him. For many days, that sound has carried fear, memory, grief, and hope. It has been under the earth, above the road, over the market, through snow, beside firelight, inside prayer, and across fields where villagers did not always understand one another, but sometimes tried. Now the bell rings from its tower. Only that. A bell in a tower. Tom closes his eyes. "Above," he says. No one answers at first. There is no need. After the service, you gather near the abbey gate as sunrise spills gently over the fields. Brother Martin gives Tom a small task for spring return when the road's dry and help repair barrels in the storehouse. Tom nods, not eagerly, not fearfully, simply as a man receiving work. Useful work. Future work. That matters. Father Aldred speaks of Brackenmere's garden patch. Maud speaks of mending the cottage roof. Hob attempts to steal bread from the lay brother and nearly succeeds, which suggests all earthly things remain imperfect. Soon, the road home waits. You look back once at the abbey, the worn stone, the narrow windows, the quiet church, the infirmary where candles burn through long nights. You think of Lady Eleanor behind her keep walls, Agnes in Alderwick spared by mercy just in time, the former soldier on the Pilgrim Road, Osbert with his bent badge, Edith among her herbs, a farmer in the market who remembered Tom's humanity aloud. What happened to mentally ill people in the Middle Ages? There was never one answer. Some were prayed over. Some were sheltered. Some were mocked. Some were feared. Some were restrained. Some were protected by neighbours. Some were hidden by families. Some walked pilgrim roads. Some found kindness in monasteries. Some suffered terribly from ignorance and suspicion. Some survived because one person, then another, refused to abandon them. The age was harsh. The knowledge was limited. The explanations were tangled with spirits, humours, sin, grief, moonlight, relics, herbs, and fear. Yet beneath all that, you have seen hands offering broth, candles kept burning, blankets tucked around shoulders, tools saved from thieves, songs played softly in smoky rooms, and people learning slowly, imperfectly, that a troubled mind does not erase the person within. You begin walking back down the road. The sun rises higher. Frost melts from the grass. Mud returns, because even profound human reflection cannot improve medieval drainage. Tom walks beside Maud. Hob trots ahead. The Abbey bell fades behind you, still high, still clear, still above. And now the journey softens. The road grows quieter beneath your feet. The fields stretch pale and calm beneath the morning light, and the village waits in the distance with its low roofs, thin smoke, muddy lanes, and ordinary human troubles. You feel the cold easing from your hands. You feel the warmth of the long night's fires lingering somewhere inside your cloak, as if every hearth you passed has left one small ember for you to carry. Tom does not speak for a while. Maud does not need him to. Father Aldred hums a prayer under his breath. Brother Martin turns back toward the Abbey. Hob pauses once, looks at everyone with great seriousness, then continues on, satisfied that the world is still following. The sky brightens slowly. The bell's gone now. Only birds remain. Only breath. Only footsteps. And as Brackenmere rises out of the mist, you understand that the medieval world is fading gently around you. The rushes, the candles, the relics, the herbs, the wet wool, the stone halls, the whispered fears, the imperfect mercies. They settle into quiet darkness like ashes banked for morning. You're safe here, outside the old cold roads. You may let the village dim, let the Abbey walls soften, let the fire sink low. Let Tom and Maud reach their warm doorway, where bread waits, and broth waits, and another day begins without needing to be perfect. The last thing you hear is not a buried bell, not a cry, not a judgment, only a soft door closing against the morning chill and the hush of a world finally resting.